Okay. It's 127, chapter 10. Having father gone was strange. The tavern seemed cold and empty, the way it is when you wake up at midnight and realize the fires have gone out. Mother didn't cry, except right at the beginning, the night I told her what had happened. She went on believing that he was alive. Well, they had no reason to kill him, Timothy. I believe they're holding him somewhere, and they'll let him go by and by. But the days passed, and he didn't come home. And soon she changed her story. Well, he's in a prison ship somewhere. As soon as this terrible war is over, he'll be home again. I didn't know whether she was saying that because she believed it, or she was just trying to keep me from thinking that father was dead. Now half the family was gone, and our lives were really changed. Mother and I had all of the work to do, which meant that there was hardly any time off for either one of us. We even had to work on Sundays, which was a sin. God will forgive us, Tim. Don't worry about it. I'm sure of that. I didn't tell her that I wasn't worried. But the work worried me all right. There was so much to do. Old Prue and the chickens and the sheep to take care of, and the spring planting, the corn and greens we needed for the tavern, and the cleaning and the cooking, and of course somebody had to be at the tap all the time to draw beer and serve the meals to the travelers and make up beds for the people who came through needing a place to sleep. There were a lot of people going through too. Messengers going here and there, and people moving to different towns, and commissary officers and such. So business seemed good, but actually it wasn't. Because a lot of people, the ones on official business, well, they paid in commissary notes, which were just pieces of paper that wouldn't be worth anything at all unless the rebels won. You couldn't buy very much with commissary notes. A lot of people wouldn't even take them unless they were strong patriots and felt they ought to in order to show faith to George Washington and the rebel government. So do you see these commissary notes, boys and girls? It's almost like paying a monarch dollars, saying that one day the monarch dollar will rule. But betting that on a war, it's like a bet. It's a large risk to take that the monarchs are going to rule. Oh, it's kind of funny, the monarch, like the royalty who is ruling at the time during the Revolutionary War, right? Or paying with monopoly money, something like that. This commissary notes has really little value at this point, and it's a risk to take them. Business was good in the store too. Food was in short supply, and so was everything else. And we could sell anything we could get our hands on. Cloth, farming tools, wheat, sugar, rum, anything at all. We even started dealing in used goods. Farmers were desperate for everything. Shovels and plowshares, candle molds, churns, and all the rest of it. Sometimes Mother would hear a widow whose husband had died or had been killed in the war and couldn't manage the farm anymore. She'd be willing to sell us the old farming tools, and we could easily resell them for a good price. But even that didn't help much. Prices kept going up, and depreciation of the paper money took a lot of the profit out of it. Does anyone remember what depreciation means? It's a big adult word.
Like you don't appreciate what somebody's doing?
It's about appreciation, but it's more a monetary appreciation. So it's like the value of an item that you buy, the value goes away right away. What'd you say?
Taxes.
Not necessarily taxes. It's like sort of like you think about that brand new pair of shoes you bought this weekend. You may have paid $100 or $120 for them. As soon as you wear them one time, the value of those shoes is less than half. It depreciates as soon as you walk out of the store with them. You see, so the depreciation is the value of something. If you buy something that increases in value, it doesn't depreciate. The value appreciates. It goes up. Okay? It's a very adult word. So the depreciation will go down. But even that didn't help much. I'm on the bottom of page 129, the last paragraph. Prices kept going up, and and depreciation of paper money took a lot of the profit out of it. You'd sell a bag of nails for $1, and when you went to buy some more, you'd find that the price had gone up to 2 shillings. And so you came out behind. We'd raise the price of nails, and by the time we were able to get a hold of any more, the price would have gone up again. And we'd still be behind. Of course, you weren't supposed to raise the prices. The Connecticut General Assembly had made laws about how much you could charge for things, but the laws weren't of any use. If you had to pay 2 shillings for nails, you couldn't sell them for 2 shillings, no matter what the law said. Why couldn't you sell them for 2 shillings?
Because you already bought it.
You paid 2 shillings. So would there be any profit?
No.
Profit is when you make money by raising the price, like every store that's in business has to do. They don't pay the prices they sell those goods to you. Whether it's shoes or food, they always increase the price that they charge you.
Because, like, if you have those chips and they bring in the chips and in the big truck, they pay you a whole lot. You have to pay a whole lot of money.
A whole lot more than Lowe's paid for them, right? That's why they can afford to do those things like buy one, get one free. They're still making a profit. That just shows you how much of a profit they must be making, right? Okay. So what we did to get around this law by charging the legal 2 shillings for the nails or whatever it was, and then we charge $1 shilling more for the bag we sold them in. Yeah. It wasn't really honest, but we didn't have a choice. The whole thing really made me feel pretty sick, working that hard from sunrise to sundown and never being able to get ahead. But there was nothing we could do about it except to pray every night that the war would end soon and Father and Sam would come home again. We spent a lot of time trying to get letters to Sam. Mother figured that once Sam realized his own side had captured or maybe even killed his father, he'd come home and manage things. He should be tired of playing soldier boy by now. I should think that glory would have worn off. She had a talk with Colonel Reed about it. Colonel Reed had been head of a whole regiment of militia, but he'd quit the job. He said it was because he was too old. But everybody knew that was just an excuse. He quit because he was against the war and he didn't want to fight in it. He was a patriot, but he didn't approve of the war. He said to my mother, Mrs. Meeker, even if you can persuade him to come home, they may not let him. Well, that doesn't seem right. Of course, Sam could claim it was a hardship case, the father gone and only the younger brother left at home, but the fact that Mr. Meeker is considered a Tory won't help. If he's got the brains he was born with, he won't tell them that, Colonel Reed. Colonel Reed smiled. I don't imagine he will, Mrs. Meeker. But I wasn't so sure he was going to be able to change Sam's mind to begin with. He'd got himself into this war and to throw out the British out of the country so we could be free. And when Sam was determined, he usually stuck to things. Pig-headed was what some people called him, but not me. Of course, I still hadn't figured out what he was fighting for. It seemed to me that we were free all along. What had the English government ever done against me? I thought about it a lot, and I never could figure out why they'd hurt me that mattered so much. Naturally, in church, we had to pray for the king and Parliament. What is Parliament?
It's like
the office.
no, the people that make the laws.
In which country?
Britain.
The British government is the Parliament, right? So he's saying we have to pray not only for the king, but for the Parliament. Yeah, and that was a nuisance because it made the prayers go on even longer. As a matter of fact, we weren't supposed to pray for the king and Parliament anymore. The Assembly had declared that it was treason to pray for them. But Mr. Beach was pretty brave, and even though he was over 75 years old, he went on praying for them anyway. A couple of times, rebels had come in the church and pulled him down from the pulpit and pushed him around. But he didn't care. He made us pray for the king and Parliament just the same. Picture you're in church and some people come in and pull your pastor off the altar or the pulpit. Can you imagine? This is the kind of intensity that he's facing all of the time. Yes.
Also, that's a pretty weird thing, though, because usually back then they don't live really to be that
You're right. That is unusual
That
for
might
him.
be because he's a good person.
It could be, yeah. You could very well be. Takes good care of himself. Still, besides having extra pairs, I couldn't think of anything the Keen had made me do that I didn't want to do. But that wasn't the way Sam felt about it, and I wasn't exactly sure he'd come home even when he found out that Father was gone. There was only one way to find out, so we kept trying to get messages to him. We asked Betsy Reed to tell him about Father if she got in touch with him, but she didn't know where he was any more than we did. So there were a lot of changes in our lives, but the biggest one, the one that was happening inside myself. This is a turning point in the book, boys and girls. So think about this change. Think about what you would feel like if you'd experienced that trip home, carrying all of the goods for the tavern, knowing that your family's livelihood depended on you, and you were able to accomplish that insurmountable task of outwitting those men, those brave, callous cowboys who were willing to steal and harm and maybe even kill, and he outwitted all three of them. Think about how that would make you feel. Now, right now in this story, we're having like a flashback moment. He's talking about everyday life, what he's experiencing. Now he's going back to that night that he returned and he made it home safely, without Father, but he made it home with all of the goods.
Technically, he outsmarted two of them. The other one just did it because the other two left.
You're right. That's I stand corrected. Okay, so I'm going to start again. Page 132, that paragraph, it starts. So there were a lot of changes in our lives, but the biggest one was that was happening inside of myself. Ever since I got the wagon home by myself, I hadn't felt like a boy anymore. You don't think that things like that happen overnight, but this one did. Of course, I was dead tired when I went to bed that night, and Mother let me sleep late the next morning. And when I woke up, I was different. I noticed it at first at breakfast. Usually I sat there over my porridge, moaning to myself about all the chores I had to do, or having to go to school, or something, and trying to think of some way to get out of whatever it was. Or when Mother turned her head, I'd scoop out a fingerful of molasses from the jar and stir it into my milk. You guys don't like take little sweets here and there, do you? No. Your parents? No, you don't do that. An extra cookie or an extra roll, extra donut out of the box. Or I'd eat breakfast slowly so I could stall going to work. No. That morning, after the terrible trip home, right from the first moment we got finished saying grace, I began planning the things that I had to do, which things had to be done first, and what was the best way to get them done. It was funny. It didn't even cross my mind to stall or to get out of the work. I didn't wait for Mother to tell me what to do. I brought the subject up myself. Oh, I've got to get the wagon unloaded right away. Everything will get damp sitting out there in the barn. Maybe I can get Jerry Sanford to help me roll the barrels down. Mother nodded. I think she must have been surprised to hear me talk like that, but she didn't let on. You'll need somebody bigger than Jerry. Perhaps you can hire Sam Smith's Negro, Ned. Well, we discussed it all, and about halfway through breakfast, I began to realize that I had changed. I wasn't acting my usual self. I was acting more like a... You couldn't say that I was really an adult, but I wasn't a child anymore. That was certain. I had thought about showing off in front of Sam when he came home. I'd say things like, well, Sam, we've decided not to put in the oats this year. We're going to use the space for corn. Or, we're not keeping the kitchen fire going all the time. I haven't got enough time for wood cutting as it is. I would be the one who knew about such things, not him. But even though it was nice to feel more grown up and act that way too, I missed Father, especially toward the end of the day when I was so tired and cold and hungry, and there was still wood to be brought up, and the barn to be cleaned, and old Prue to be milked. I began to feel sorry for myself and wishing that Father was back. I'd imagine that if I looked up, I'd suddenly see him striding into the barnyard, and I'd look up, but he wouldn't be there. I'd stand there feeling disappointed, even though I'd really known he wouldn't be there, and I'd get angry with the rebels for starting the war, and I'd be angry with Sam for going to play soldier and have all the glory while I had to do all the work at home. It wasn't fair. It would make me curse, and I didn't care whether cursing was a sin.